This is Jim. He was a shy kid growing up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, who somehow found his extroverted outlet in the form of Jim Mature, the front man of a Green Bay hardcore punk rock band called No Response, for which Jim received much fan mail, including from the likes of a 14-year-old Dave Grohl and many others, and would go on from there to tour manage bands, including the Black Keys, Wilco, The Replacements, Clairo, Seven Lions, Major Lazer, lots of others, Empire of the Sun. In 2020, in the midst of a nationwide shutdown due to the COVID-19 virus, and the entire closure of his entire industry, I got to marry Jim, and he became my husband under the bridge in a post-apocalyptic wedding that we remember as a perfect day. And not only were we joined by friends and family, we had people like Wendy Wilson and Anthony Pritchard come visit us and stand up in our wedding. It was just a magical day and a magical experience. And our wedding was officiated by Reverend Norb, of course. And one of the things that he said in his speech at our wedding was that Jim and Stacy would be the couple that would keep love alive or die trying. And I think that day we didn't know maybe how serious that of a description that would come to be for us. And certainly when we promised that day to, remain in love with each other through sickness and health, richer or poorer, I didn't know, I don't think any of us could have predicted that we would be tested of that in 3 weeks. After we had 3 weeks of a marriage before we were tested by a stroke. Obviously the richer and poorer thing, considering neither of us, like both of our jobs that we had done in the past were completely gone. We already were tested there at the time of our wedding, which cost us actually nothing. This all just came together with all of our friends, and that's what made it perfect. So anyway, so in 2020, Jim had a stroke. Our life was already kind of in a state of chaos before that, and uncertainty, as was everyone's. And so when, at the time that Jim was first put into the ICU, my phone was disconnected, the internet was shut off. I had to go to a McDonald's to try to get on a Wi-Fi so that I could even communicate with him in the ICU. And I still, to this day, when I drive past that McDonald's, their Wi-Fi pops up, and I remember that. Ended up going over to my friend Jerry's house. She let me, use her Wi-Fi, and also got me then in touch with Wendy Wilson, who, maybe within a couple of days after that, had started a GoFundMe to help with the aftermath of Jim's stroke. And just, we had, like I said, life was already a little fragile for us, even before the stroke. So we were very grateful because thanks to the support of a lot of family, friends, artists that Jim's worked for, people that he's worked with in various capacities, family, and even some strangers, we were able to kind of be saved. And I was able to spend a lot of time with Jim, make sure he was going to seem like he was on a good path, and just be together because, of course, being a road wife, being in a relationship with somebody who's a tour manager, all of a sudden when we were able to just sit and watch Bon Appetit cooking shows together and felt like we I will remember it as a very precious time. Anyway, so we went back. We kind of just thought in every way that once the world came back, our jobs are going to come back, and they're going to come back better than ever. we were so ready to just take on life and have a comeback. But, you know, a lot has happened since 2020 and lots of cool stuff, lots of cool stuff, lots of growth, lots of learning and lessons, healing, all kinds of stuff. Oops. But we've also now had in 2022, Jim was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So at that time, he came home and he just started to really know that something wasn't right. And of course, having had a stroke, he thought maybe there were just some residual effects of that were coming to the surface, or maybe he had even had another stroke and didn't know it. And so he ended up leaving the Demi Lovato tour early, which we had kind of thought was going to be, that was his, end game. That was what's going to finally get us back on track. Because we were already off the tracks before this, kind of, still, because the world didn't quite come back in the way that we thought. And certainly not in terms of Jim's health with his Parkinson's diagnosis. So when that happened, I had completely stepped away from my business. I was going to use that time to kind of land in a new place. I've landed in a much farther away place now as a result of that, but I'm thankful. I am thankful for that. But anyway, we did not start a GoFundMe this time, even though really we were kind of almost dealing with worse circumstances. So, a stroke is something that you really obviously at least can recover from, whereas Parkinson's is this thing that we're going to be dealing with for the rest of Jim's life for a long time. And it's degenerative. So we have a lot coming in our future that we know we have to prepare for. And we also have a strong need to be present every day too. And we don't have that right now. So, yeah, in the first year, we didn't do anything. People suggested a GoFundMe. People suggested industry grants and resources. People suggested different charities. People suggested all this stuff. And I think that we just felt that since we had already been the subject of charity, and we were very grateful for that we didn't and couldn't be the people who did it again. So, that first year kind of almost killed us, though, really. Just the grinding it out year was, I can cross that off the list of things that are going to work for us, and that's not one of them, but we did it. And that ended up culminating, really, and Jim ended up going back out on tour for a little bit because we were just, really at the brink of losing everything. The cars were tires were falling off. The brakes in the car he was driving were said to be so bad that they were surprised anybody was driving the car. So we actually have a graveyard of used cars now at this point, and that's one of them. So in 2024, when Jim did return to the road for a US and Australian tours for a band called I Prevail, I'm thankful for that experience. He's thankful for that experience. It provided a level of closure, I think, on his road life, his road chapter, his ability to work on the road. He came back in horrible health, horrible condition. He had bronchitis. He came back so sure that he could not do it. And I think that if anybody saw him, and if particularly anybody who's ever worked on the road and understands its demands, would understand that that chapter is over. I don't believe that his legacy has yet been realized. I don't believe that he's done being of value in a variety of ways, both to his industry and also to our community here in Green Bay, which is, of course, his hometown. So it's kind of a, hero's journey type of thing. And Jim has had the opportunity, even though it's not really resulted in any kind of career or anything, to help with the Draft City Music Fest, which happened during the NFL draft when that was in Green Bay. They had a variety of different bands come in, and it was kind of a one-of-a-kind experience that's ever really even happened in Green Bay. It was wonderful. I got to work it, so it was the first time where I was at a concert with Jim, and we were working together instead of just me being like the tour manager's wife, and it was such a beautiful experience. And he has the opportunity to get involved doing more in partnership with a new venue that's opening up in Green Bay. He's already been in contact with some management companies about possibly getting some bands here, and just like nurturing those relationships. And that's something that Jim is naturally like good at, and he genuinely is a good person. I can see that, like I can see the mark that he's left on people that he's met and in the industry. And he sometimes gets in his head about that, but I can see it. And so I feel like there are other people who out there celebrating Jim, because he can't go out on the road. He's filed for disability. We since starting to tell a little bit more of his story on a page called Jim Runge IRL. So starting that, we've been notified of a second denial for his disability. So that's now put us into a time frame of another, they say 6 months to a year, but I'm going to say it's like maybe 9 months to a little over a year, just based on how long things took before. And so that's just great as we sit and wait for that. But we have spent now, it's been 4 years since Jim's Parkinson's diagnosis. We've experimented with all different kinds of ways to make this work. I took it on myself because, in a sense, from here on out, like, I have to be the person to earn money. It has to be me. It has to be me. I have to crack the code on this. I have to figure this out, and I believe I will. I still need some help from some like key people, but I believe in it. But it's probably not going to happen on the other side of, or until we're on the other side of what I have come to label an existential bottleneck. And that's how I feel, is that we are bottlenecked by survival. Behind that, though, is all these things that we want to write and share, and events that we want to be involved in, and people that we want to be available to help support in return. We want this, to be a chapter where we start like giving something back. It might not be money, but we do have stuff to give back. We just need to cure that bottleneck. As I said, we have really just been trying to survive. When I see the couple, the Empire State Building couple, it just moves me so much. And I think back to that, like our post-apocalyptic wedding, and I think of the kind of couple that Jim and I are, and I think of like how high I feel like we have climbed, one step in front of the next, never like in a staircase that is appearing one step at a time, sometimes right at the last moment before you are preparing to just free fall into the unknown, and often put there by people who helped in just even little ways along the way, because sometimes it was somebody just randomly sending us $100 gift card for Walmart that let us get that those paper towels and cat food that we needed or something. It just let us keep going. And so I'm here actually to celebrate the fact that we kept going. I'm fortunate to be sitting still in my house. That's almost a miracle. But we have gotten to a point where we have to stop looking at survival, and we have to start looking at restoration. What does it take? What would it take for us to truly be restored? Because even then, when we look at the future that is ahead of us, we still have a lot to figure out. We still have a lot to face. We still have a lot of challenges ahead of us. And to think about taking on any of that in our current state, we also have nervous systems that have been kind of like in fight or flight for a very long time. And that's just not... we've got to lay some stuff down. And so the last few weeks we have really thought of everything. We, in addition to starting a GoFundMe, which I feel we're just to the point where there are so many people that do want to help, that even if it's just those people, that it's meaningful. And given that our crisis that we've hoped would not come until we had a way to solve it, it has come, of course, ahead of our ability to solve it. And that is that we basically, as of tomorrow, have no car. We did temporarily but we don't anymore. And so, yeah, we have no car. That's a big deal. I have a teenager that I have to drive all over the place. I have a baby that I help pick up from daycare every week. I have Jim's appointments. We already didn't have a car that was reliable enough to go to his appointments in Milwaukee. And so that was already a challenge. Now we're kind of to the point where we don't have any car. And I have just been fantasizing. I've been fantasizing about what it would be like to be a person that had a reliable vehicle, a reliable, safe vehicle that I knew wasn't going to break down, that we could take to Milwaukee to us. We could even take it to Minneapolis for a weekend someday and go see friends and like actually live life. Oh my gosh, I've become just determined. I've just become so determined to somehow become that person. So we've thought of things that we could potentially sell, and we'll be sharing some of those things because regardless of whether we ended up selling them or finding anybody that even would want to buy them, even if we wanted to sell them, they all have stories. And so this, we have, as I mentioned, if that's not the route you came in through, started sharing Jim's story on a page called Jim Runge IRL in real life. And we are slowly making it a little bit realer and realer life. And I think that now with Operation Runge Restoration in action, I think we do have to kind of just start telling more of our story. And so stay tuned for that, because that's the cool thing about this operation, is that if we can make it happen, we also will get to share the beauty of it. And we've always just held on to hope. We've always held on to hope and the power of belief, and we're trying to exercise so much of that right now. And so that brings us to now. We are going to launch a GoFundMe. We want that to come with just a couple of notes, I guess. One, as I said, if you would like to follow along more and like just learn more about our story, the good thing is that we do have Jim Runge IRL up, which kind of talks a bit. Jim also had a recent spine surgery, so he's technically in recovery for that and can't work at all at the moment. So, and his recovery is very important to him being able to set up a good foundation for a life with Parkinson's from here on out, where he still has some years and life left in him. So you can learn more about that. And that also, personally, me, as a matter of almost like spiritual belief, I strongly believe, that there is an energy attached to money, period, no matter how it's exchanged. And so if I don't want any of this to come from anybody who's struggling themselves, for who like this will put them in a bad place. We know that there's lots of other people out there dealing with all kinds of medical issues, job loss, all kinds of stuff. And that's another maybe reason that we've taken so long to do this, is just that always just comes to mind. But so I just want to state clearly, don't feel that obligation unless this like brings you maybe a little happiness to follow along with what. So when it came to trying to decide what amount to put on this GoFundMe, I will admit that it was a little hard. I first came into it with the mindset that we've been using, the survival mindset of what could be the bare minimum of what's going to like reasonably sustain us and give us, transportation and possibly a bit to help us survive the next 6 to 12 plus months. And more is compiling, and debt, and just, it's a lot. So when we thought about, okay, what would it actually really take to restore us? It's honestly probably at a zero. So our operation overall, between any means that we choose to go about trying to create it, is a pretty significant need, unfortunately. So we'll set it at $25,000, and we may end up having to use a lot of that for a car, but we're hoping for the best, and we hope to be able to earn some money through selling some things, and just hoping, I guess, for maybe a couple miracles to come through somewhere. But we appreciate, and there's lots of different other ways to help, even besides donate. Obviously, share it in today's day and age. Just sharing it could be the difference between our, surviving and thriving. So that is very helpful. And also just following along with Jim's story on Jim Runge IRL on Facebook. He's got a YouTube channel and an Instagram, and we're not obviously very professional content creators, but man, I hope in this day and age, maybe that actually makes it more real, I guess, because this is real. And yeah, so just follow along and keep Jim in your thoughts. Tell the stories of him. Share those along with the link to the GoFundMe. And yeah, just rooting for us. That's cool. We really appreciate that as well. And yeah, thank you in advance for your support from Green Bay.